Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
We're all driving a lot less during the pandemic, and if you've been following the news, you might have heard that many people will be getting a rebate on their auto insurance as a result.
But there's more to this story. Joining me on today's show is Stephen Gursten from Michigan Auto Law. He shares what's really happening and why maybe your rebate should be a lot more. Welcome to Your Daily Detroit. It's Tuesday, April 14th, 2020. I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jairus Daves. Let's get started.
Joining us by Skype is Stephen Gursten. He's the managing partner at Michigan Auto Law. Stephen, welcome back to Daily Detroit.
Thank you, Sven. Thanks for having me back.
Allstate, Geico, State Farm, Nationwide, all the big auto insurers are announcing plans to issue refunds to policyholders because fewer people are out actually driving on the roads right now. Accident claims are way down. So what's going on here? Are we to believe that auto insurers are suddenly discovering their charitable side by deciding, we need a break from this, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, no, the insurance companies are definitely not Santa Claus. Let me correct that misimpression right away. So yeah, there's some really splashy headlines right now about how the insurers are going to give back millions of dollars to people. And listen, in this new world of ours, any money back is good, right? But when you compare what the insurance companies are going to be saving compared to what they're giving back, it really is just a fraction of the percentage that the insurance companies are going to be saving based upon the claims that they're no longer going to be having to pay out on, based upon the huge drop on miles that are being driven. Consumers are only seeing a small fraction of that. So most of these rebates are only 15 or 20%. The highest I've seen so far is 25%. But you have insurance companies saving, in some cases, literally billions on claims that they're not paying out. So when you do the math, it really doesn't add up.
Are insurance companies voluntarily doing this, or is somebody kind of forcing their hand for them?
Where I think this started was in many states, and Michigan is not one of them, unfortunately. But in many states, they have insurance commissioners that have a lot more power. And the insurance commissioners, I think, were starting to put pressure on the insurers saying, hey, if there's no one on the road because everything is shut down and there are stay-at-homes, and if you're not paying out claims, why are you still charging people 100% of their premiums? What I think happened was that started in some other states that have much more proactive and powerful insurance commissioners. And the insurance companies then use that as part of a PR blitz. And if you look today, you have these big splashy headlines of insurers are giving back millions of dollars to their customers. Mm-hmm. So I think the PR people for the insurers got involved in it. And that's where people now have this impression that they're going to be getting a lot of money back. But when you take it to Michigan, for example, there's a big data company called Inrex. And what they do is that they track basically traffic and they compare it to national averages in other cities. Well, they just came out and said that Michigan actually has the largest drop in traffic in the nation. And Detroit is the largest drop in traffic of any metropolitan area in the nation. So you're not even talking about the national average of a 40 or 50% drop. You're talking about much more significant drops in traffic in Michigan. But again, people in Michigan are only going to be getting, in most cases, at most 15 or 20% back from these insurance companies.
Is there any kind of movement in the legal community to try to open up their pocketbooks a little bit more?
So not yet, because this is happening very quickly. I will say this, and to their credit, DIFS, which is the Michigan Department of Insurance, actually just issued a bulletin this morning to insurers. For the first time, it's actually requiring them to disclose their actuarial assumptions behind these rebates. So my hope is that these rebates and these credits, because remember, the other thing is insurers are really financial companies, are really more big investment companies. That's where they really make their money. They're not really in the business of insurance. They're in the business of finance and investing. So they don't want to write checks back to people if they can avoid it because the market is down and their investments are down. They don't want to actually have the loss. So most of these rebates are actually going to be credits on the next time you buy a policy or renew your policy with that insurance company. So they're trying to keep you as a customer, and they're trying to also make sure, and this is really important for all of your listeners, especially if people are cash strapped, that they're not canceling their insurance. Because if they do, obviously not only do they not get a rebate or credit, but they also are really at risk if they get in a car crash.
So you're saying the refunds in many cases are actually, they won't be refunds as much as they will be sort of like discounts the next time you renew your policy.
Right.
Wow.
So what it'll be is normally a 15% credit on what the policy premium would have been at renewal time. And that's what most people are going to see. They're not going to be getting checks back.
Is there any precedent for this? Like, have we ever seen insurance companies issue refunds like this in any kind of national event?
So I've been doing this for 26 years. This is all I do, and I've never seen anything like this before.
Well, speaking of which, how is coronavirus, affecting the work you're doing at Michigan Auto Law? I mean, obviously, I'm sure all of your attorneys are working from home and everything, but I mean, you can't go to court nowadays.
Right. I feel terrible for my clients. We're in a tough situation because most courts are really still shut down. Because insurance companies really are, like I said, financial companies, they have the exact opposite of incentive to move cases along. They want to delay things and sit on their money for as long as they can because they earn money on their money. Mm-hmm. So what I'm seeing, unfortunately, is every case I have, the defense lawyers and insurers are trying to adjourn things and delay things and cancel things. And it's a real battle. We are, unfortunately, like most people, very, very slow. And I am fighting an uphill battle trying to get these cases moving again when, the insurance companies are canceling everything. And, a lot of these judges are MIA, unfortunately. They're some are doing a good job, but a lot of courts all over the state, they're just shut down.
Yeah.
One final thought, I guess, on these credits and rebates. It's important to bring home just how much money these insurance companies are going to be saving. So I'll use Allstate as an example because they're one of the three biggest insurance companies in the nation. Allstate, on average, pays about $1 billion with a B, dollars out in claims every single month. $1 billion a month. Mm-hmm. But the rebate that Allstate has said they're going to offer their customers is only 15%. So Allstate is now saving basically $850 million a month. And that's just on claims. It doesn't include miles driven and all these other costs for the insurance company that they don't have now. But their customers are only going to see a fraction of that. So again, it makes for a very splashy headline, but the customers are really going to get, unfortunately, a very raw, unfair deal out of this.
Yeah. All right. Well, Stephen Gursten is the head of Michigan Auto Law. Stephen, thanks so much for coming on and helping us get a better understanding of how this is all working.
Great talking to you.
We've told you about the large drive-through coronavirus test site at the State Fairgrounds in Detroit. Now, Oakland County will have its own. It'll open Thursday and be located at the county complex at 1200 North Telegraph. The goal is to increase testing capacity to 250 tests per day at the site within the next week, and results are expected to come back within 24 to 48 hours. The center will be open to first responders, essential business employees, and Pontiac residents. Eventually, as capacity increases, they'll make it available to all Oakland County residents. And unlike the Detroit site, at the Pontiac site, you do not need a prescription to get a test. But what you do need to do is call the Oakland County Health Division's Nurse On Call hotline at 1-800-848-5533. That's 1-800-848-5533. And of course, we'll be sure to put that number in the show notes.
And before we let you go, a little fun fact here from Detroit's illustrious history. On this day, 60 years ago, that's April 14th, 1960, for you math nerds out there, Berry Gordy incorporated Motown Records right here in Motor City. Jer, there have been so many great songs that came out of that record label. The Sound of Young America, lots of memories. What are your favorite Motown songs, Jer?
I mean, I'm biased to a couple of them. First, the 1967 version of Ain't No Mountain High Enough with Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell. And of course, Tammy Terrell. Tammy is spelled with an I, as I am always reminded by fellow Tammy Terrell fan and historian Dan Austin. He's very key on this. He's corrected me on Facebook a couple of times. And behind me at the studio here is actually a record of my mom's that has that track from the late 60s. It's one of the things one of my possessions I love the most.
You should probably let someone with an actual turntable borrow that slab of vinyl sometime. Hint, hint.
Fair. Second, and I would love to get vinyl of this because I just love the cover of it. I love anything by Stevie Wonder, but one of my favorites is from 1965, and that's Uptight. I mean, it's just one of my favorite, like, fun, like, get you moving kind of songs. And I love it. It's got all of the quintessential Motown bits to it.
Yeah, nice upbeat, kind of fun. Hard to not move to that song for sure.
What do you love, man?
So I got to go with something by Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. And honestly, it could be a toss-up between Your Love Is Like a Heat Wave and Dancing in the Streets, right? Like both songs are classics, incredible sounds of Motown. I probably got to give the edge to Your Love Is Like a Heat Wave, if only because it's like a favorite of mine on barroom jukeboxes, right? Like, especially in the dead of winter, I love nothing more than like sauntering up to a jukebox in a bar when it's freezing outside and plunking in a quarter and playing that song like in the middle of February, right? It's just like, it's such an icebreaker, like, pun intended. And it's a fantastic song too. Just always lifts my spirits. The other thing I'm going to pick is a little bit of an unorthodox song for the sort of Motown sound, I guess you could argue. I mean, it definitely kind of broke the mold a little bit and didn't sound like anything on the Motown label to that time. And that's 1972, The Temptations, Papa Was a Rolling Stone. But I love the that kind of psychedelic soul that it played on, and it's a funky song, man. I love it. It's just 11 minutes long. It's a classic.
I mean, it's a great track, and it kind of illustrates that more modern Motown, as Motown kind of started to move from like the super jukeboxy, like poppy bubblegum to something that had a little bit more complexity to it.
Yeah, I mean, Marvin Gaye, who you mentioned his track with Tammy Terrell, he softened Berry Gordy up a little bit when he did What's Going On, because Berry Gordy was, famously allergic to anything political or anything that took a stand, And I mean, you have to realize too that Motown Records came up in the 1960s. That was a time of huge, societal unrest and the Vietnam War and protests and the civil rights movement and everything. But he wanted to steer, well clear of all that stuff and just kind of keep it straight down the line, just write great songs with killer pop hooks and everything. And so, Marvin Gaye definitely kind of rocked the boat a little bit. There's stories about how Berry Gordy didn't even want to put that record out originally because he was uncomfortable with it. But, so kudos to Marvin Gaye for breaking the ice on that one and making a song like Papa Was a Rolling Stone possible.
First off, Sven, some great picks. And I will say, though, that is all for your Daily Detroit today. Thank you so much for listening.
Have you told a friend about the Daily Detroit podcast yet? Well, maybe it's time you do so. It'd be much appreciated. If this is your first time listening to the show, consider subscribing free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
With that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Sven Gustafson. Take care of each other. We'll get through this thing together.